Hello everyone, this is Chris back again with another episode of Magic's Gathering. We're all Audition, and we are playing an Eldridge. Eldrick? He's a hard name to pronounce. He's basically Mtg Odin. Mtg Odin. Mtga Odin. I guess he's part of Magic as a whole, but we haven't really played much paper Magic these days. Like the whole pandemic thing. Whatever. Either way, that's what we're playing today. He has some cool effects. Helps you with your card selection. He can be a bird if you need him to. Any commander that can be a bird is generally pretty strong. Looks like our opponent is playing a Jadzi deck. And with the Hero and crap, it might be a Jadzi Mill deck. But I don't know how you would make that work, really. We have a minor mill sub-theme. Because our deck really wants to do is draw a bunch of cards. That benefits our commander. So, one of the additions that ended up making in the deck and is our hand at the moment is Teferi's Tutelage. Because it mills 2 every time you draw a card. We want to draw a lot of cards. Midnight Clock there. It'll draw 7 cards. Alright. Inscription of Insight, that draws cards. Our bird mills, scries us so that we can find more card draw. We ended up drawing a Glass Pole Mimic there. I had to put in a lot of creatures in this deck because I have I wanted to put in a lot of creatures that benefited from drawing cards or drew cards themselves, so that I could have a Thassa in the deck to basically just blink them for their enter the battlefield effects. That's how I justify putting Cloudseer in a deck. I don't think it's that bad of a decision. Although our Ascendant Spirit there in the graveyard would not be very well blinked. This is one of those rare episodes of MTG Brawl on the channel where we will actually probably, well, I say probably, I know we won't get to another game because this was a 1-game session. We just ended up going the full distance. And you know, for YouTube's sake, full distance is 10 minutes or up. I don't always do that because sometimes when you're just done, you're done, you know? Rage does factor into it, or just depends on the context of what you're doing. Teferi's Tutelage comes down, we have to loot away something. We end up keeping the land, getting rid of the Glass Pole Mimic. Between the two, I'd rather have an untapped land than a tapped land. We don't really have any creatures to copy at the moment. My Thieving Skydiver's in the deck, because I figured because we were playing Brawl that we might run into an Arcane Signet here. Our deck runs Arcane Signet. I think most Brawl decks run Arcane Signet. Unfortunately for us, it doesn't look like we're going to get there in this game. They go Migration's Path. They are really moving to mill us out with this crab. Which would be a pretty not cool way to die. Luckily for us, we have an out for the crab on the battlefield in Midnight Clock. We can get that up to 12 counters. Won't matter that we have no cards in our library because we can just shuffle all of our graveyard back into our hand, back into our deck, draw 7 new cards, and basically we'll force him to mill us out again, which generally mill decks aren't that great at. I mean, their whole deck is built to mill, but by the time you get to the point where you shuffled your library back into your deck, so many resources have been wasted at that point that it's pretty much game over for them. Because they can't rely on a 7-card hand to do it. I suppose that's one of the benefits over the more modern take on these type of shuffle wheels, in that they tend to be single player wheels. Like if we go back to like I think it's Time Twister is what I'm thinking of. But it affects each player. So if you're in the mill against somebody and they end up playing Time Twister on you, you're basically just milling out your opponent's deck again. You just set the clock back to 0 and try again. But because of how midnight clock works, we'll end up setting our own clock back, but our opponent's clock won't set back. So we'll still be able to mill them out before they mill us out, which is not the primary plan of our deck. Our primary plan is beats, but we have to stay alive. And our best plan for staying alive is midnight clock. Can't really do much else because it's so mana intensive that Teferi's Tutelage just becomes our backup win. So that is our plan. We actually ended up drawing a Sublime Epiphany here, prior. Could be very good on this turn. I don't know what they're going to end up going for. I do like Sublime Epiphany. It's one of those cards that whenever I play it, it's just not good for me. And whenever somebody else plays it against me, it just completely hoses me. So I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with it. I don't know, I think it's because I tend to run most of my strategies as close to our resource dependency line as possible. Like by the time my opponents can cast a 6 mana counterspell, I'm probably out of resources. So I guess research research conservation may be a Magic the Gathering skill that I'm still a little bit lacking in. I wouldn't say I'm a bad Magic player, but no. We can always learn more about how to play Magic well. I have to say, I 7-2 to draft this morning. That was a fun experience. Ikoria. Gotta earn those gems. Unfortunately for us in this game, our opponent just doesn't seem to be doing anything that would cause us to use our counterspell. We have things we could be doing, but probably better just to tick up our clock. I think our opponent at this point may have just realized what kind of trap they found themselves in, where the midnight clock is going to go off and it's going to undo all of the mill ramp that they had gone through with their crab. We decided to try to counter Jadzi here. 4 to 5 modes on Sublime Epiphany. Pretty decent. Our opponent had a disdainful stroke. That sucks a little bit. But it doesn't change the fact that we will overcome their mill plan here. The 12th counter goes on. And we draw a whole new hand. Not a bad hand. I wish I had my Confounding Conundrum back when they were ramping every other turn. We're going to be milling for 14 off of the wheel, and 2 more off of our draw step. So 16 in total. It's a shame that we don't really have a way in hand to draw more. like immediately, other than Confounding Conundrum. That doesn't really seem worth it. I guess it does, depending on what we play in context. I think Fairy Formation and Conundrum are our best bets. Because Fairy Formation we can just pump 8 mana into it next turn, draw 2 cards. With the one from our turn, we'll be milling 6 out of our opponent's. After they lose this, they'll have 9 cards left. They'll have drawn 1 on their turn, which will bring them down to 8. They'll be down to like 2 cards in library, depending on how much we end up getting stopped here. Either way, they have to win with the 13 cards that they have access to at this point, which is going to be a pretty hard task for any deck. They have Jazzy on the battlefield, so they might be able to do it. Opponent thinking about whether or not it's worth it to give it a go. Looks like they are gonna get a land. Oh well, they actually conceded because there was no land in their deck. That was the game. Thanks guys for watching. I will see you in the next episode of Brawl. Bye for now.